Welcome to the Business Power Hour with Lisa and the Music Man. Live from Studio C at media stations in Bohemia, New York.
And good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Business Power Hour of Lisa and the Music Man. If you haven't noticed, I'm really the Music Man, and that's the lovely Lisa that is over there.
Thank you.
She's our co-host with the mostest.
Yeah.
And welcome. Nice to see you.
Good to see you. So how's your week going?
I don't know, I keep on seeing you everywhere I go.
I know.
So,
I know.
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we keep on cranking them out over here, which is great. I do have to say that our show this evening, in the 6 years that I have been doing this, and the accumulation of fans and followers that we do have, that this is definitely going to be within the top one or two shows that I've done for the purpose and the meaning of what these two gentlemen are all about. And in my heart, I mean, I you heard me talk about it today.
This you've been so excited about this. So why don't you present them and share?
No, I'm having
who
a
we
good
have.
time talking about them.
We got to bring them out.
All right, well, let's welcome then Doug Kornfeld and Dave Clark. Welcome, guys.
Welcome.
And they are with Disability Dream and Do, and they have so many other organizations and sports camps and things. And let's start off with how you guys met.
Well, Doug, I think you better take that.
I'll take that one. So 23 years ago, which is hard to believe, and I usually tell Dave sorry for all of this. But I was reading an article. I was actually studying for my Series 7 to work with my brothers at Merrill Lynch. And I was commuting back and forth between upstate central New York and Atlanta, where I was living at the time, with 5 children.
That's a big commute.
Yeah.
Well, it was just a temporary commute until I could get my family to central New York, kind of thing. So while I was studying at a coffee shop, I think it was in Marietta, Georgia, or Kennesaw. I'm not sure which one I was at because I would bounce around between coffee shops, studying and take a break. And this is when newspapers were still in the coffee shop. And I started reading an article about this man who played professional baseball on crutches who won the Heroes of Sports Award, which was presented to him at the big World Congress Center in Atlanta. And it was Dave Clark. And I'm looking at this picture, person playing professional baseball on crutches. Now, note it wasn't Major League Baseball, it was minor league baseball. We like to make that distinction. Still amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting here reading this article, but I had a 1-year-old at the time who was my 5th child who was born with neither arm developed. And so probably the timing of all this was a little more intriguing to me. And so I'm reading this article. I come out of the sports world. You would think I would know the person who played professional baseball on crutches. My father was in the sporting goods industry, so I was in it my whole life. Scholarship athlete, all that stuff myself. But here I'm reading this article and about this Dave Clark who played professional baseball on crutches. And to make it even scarier, he was from Corning, New York, where I was moving my family to.
Oh, my God.
Okay.
Talk about things meant to be.
So I guess, meant to be, or I don't know.
Aligning it.
Punishment from another life for one of us. So I get back to my office. I said I was commuting back and forth, and I asked my brother Kurt, I said, Kurt, who's this Dave Clark guy? Do you know this Dave Clark played professional baseball on crutches? And he's like, yeah, I know Dave. And I'm like, well, why don't I know Dave? I'm mystified at this point. To kind of make these long stories very short, obviously I was intrigued with being a father with a child with some serious limitations physically. And Dave, at that point, had just finished his 10-year career of coaching after playing. You coach, scout, do all those things. And he had finished a very successful 10-year coaching career in the Swedish major leagues, winning 3 championships in a row and retiring.
Wow.
So he was moving more permanently at that time back to Corning, New York, because he had a home there and a young daughter at the time and his wife. And so as it would be, that summer, I found out Dave was in town. I knew he was coaching. He was actually coaching one of our local professional baseball teams in nearby Elmira, New York. And lo and behold, after the game, I went around the dugout. Now, we've had to piece this story together because you got to know it's 23 years ago. And basically, I asked him if we could meet after the game, and I had my son Gideon in my arms. And of course, Dave said yes. And Dave knew my brother, so we made that last name connection or whatever. And we exchanged phone numbers that day. I called him, and we wound up meeting for breakfast shortly after that. And I guess you could say the rest is the story, whatever. But the one thing I share with people about that meeting when we had breakfast that day is that Dave shared with me that he had never heard questions like I was asking him.
Ah.
As an example.
And so while I was asking him questions, what did your parents do? I wasn't asking him what his pitch was. I wasn't asking him, all the baseball questions.
Why did you give up that home run last night?
Yeah, I wasn't asking those kind of things. How did you do all this? I was more curious from a father whose son had some serious needs. How do parents raise you to such success when you have such limitations
and independence?
And independence. And so that was I guess the start of all of this. Well, it was the start of all of this.
Let's stop you for 1 second. Okay, Dave, what was the answer that you gave Doug?
They never stopped me from trying anything.
Okay, that's really interesting because I
very basic. My parents, and they had doubts. I have a story that proves that, they had doubts, but they never showed those doubts to me, and they let me try.
There you go.
I remember. I always tell this story when, I was playing baseball, and I went to my mom. I said, I want to try to play ice hockey, and she was like, "What?" I said, "I want to play ice hockey." And of course, one of the things I remember doing at 8 years old, and I really specifically remember this, is analyzing every sport to see where my strengths fit. And where my strengths fit led me to play a position in that particular sport that I thought I could play with what I had, the abilities I had. So in ice hockey, there was one position I was going to play.
In goal.
You got it. There's a goal.
Yep.
So my mom looks at me and she goes, I could see her wheels turning in her head, and she goes, "All right, here's the deal. I'm going to let you play ice hockey, but the day you come home missing a tooth is the day it ends." Well, thank God I busted bones, I split my sternum, I had concussions, but I never lost a tooth. So
that's great. I got to mention something that you brought up, because this is a part of my life as well, and I taught it to my kids. Whatever is that, you got to try. If you never try, you will never know, and it's okay to fail. Failure is okay. It makes you stronger. Yep. But if you never try,
not being able to do something is not failure.
No, absolutely.
Failure is not trying to do something.
But no,
if we could only get Dave to use a smartphone instead of a flip phone.
Not a chance.
Oh, no.
He's not willing to try some things.
All right, so Doug, you met with Dave. You were asking him non-baseball type questions. Where did that lead?
It led to a friendship. We had him over for dinner. He became a client after that at Merrill Lynch with me. I mean, he knew my brother. There was some significant issues that we were dealing with his family finances and what have you. And so, we just through the years, but of course we're both sports guys. So we started asking each other questions. And if you've ever been with a financial advisor you usually don't even talk about money very often. You talk about family, business, where you're at, those kind of things. And so our conversations were often there. And I remember when the light bulb came on for me. Because again, initially I wasn't really asking him sports questions, and so we were on a cell phone. This is, I'm driving, and I had about a 10-minute commute tops, and I remember being on my cell phone and talking to Dave, and he was telling me all these weird things, like he played for the Indianapolis Clowns, and he pitched, and I was a good enough athlete to know. And again, I'm seeing at this point the 50-year-old Dave Clark, but he's in a scooter and he's getting up on his crutches still, but he's not very fast. And I'm thinking, well, this doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And so I started asking him the sports questions, like how did you what were your pitches? What did you do? And finally, he was so vague. You had to dig into getting his story out of him. He didn't think much of it really, and still doesn't at times. And so I was digging, and finally he would tell me, he had a curve, and he had whatever his fastball topped out at 79 miles an hour, and then it starts making less sense because you don't throw 79 miles an hour and play professional baseball. Right. At tops. And then finally he said, well, my main pitch was I was a knuckleballer. And for the audience that doesn't know what a knuckleball, I mean, maybe Dave can explain this because he was the knuckleball specialist. But I had played enough baseball and actually pitched fast pitch softball and things like that. So as soon as he said knuckleball, I was like, okay, now it's starting to make sense. And so that was when I literally got off the phone that day. I was now not in my car, but sitting on a porch of the house that we were renting at the time. And I was like, if this isn't a movie, nothing is. That's literally what I was thinking at that time. But Dave, if you want to explain the knuckleball, because I'm sure there's a lot of folks in this audience that might not know what a knuckleball is.
Well, there's a lot of ways to grip the knuckleball. Unfortunately, I don't have a baseball here, but you can grip it with the real knuckles. Mm-hmm. I gripped it with the fingertips, and most pitchers that are throwing the knuckleball do grip it with the fingertips. Some with 2 fingers. I gripped it with 4. It took me about 2 years of actually experimenting with grips, arm angles, release points, until I found out what worked for me. And even when you find out what works for you as a knuckleball pitcher, when you have an off night, leg out in the stands. Because if you can throw that knuckleball's not moving, they're going to hit you all over the park.
I don't know.
And they do.
So why did you throw the knuckleball?
I threw the knuckleball because just what you said. I topped out at 79 miles an hour. It was a desperation pitch. It was my way of thinking outside of the box to reach my goal.
I'm sure
my goal was to get to the professional level of baseball.
I'm sure
the two of you. Telling my grandfather, he was the first one I told. I was afraid to tell anybody because it was so absurd. And when I'm where I'm at now, and I look back, it was absurd. It was absolutely an absurd dream.
I'm sure the two of you know Tom Sturdivant.
Yes. Yep, well, I've definitely heard it. I don't know him, but I know the name.
Okay, when you talk about knuckleball, there's what associates with me, because I'm a Yankee fan, is Tom Sturdivant. And I had the privilege of going to Yankee Fantasy Camp in 1985, and Tom Sturdivant was there, and I get up to hit. I have never felt so stupid in my entire life. Because, you mentioned how you grip it, but you didn't tell anybody how the ball comes to the plate.
Like a butterfly.
It's all over the place.
Just like a butterfly.
And you don't know, so you're just swinging and you pray. It didn't work for me. Praying didn't work.
So you didn't get to base, I take it.
Yeah, I got to the home plate and I stayed there. I didn't get to the base.
You were struck out.
Oh yes.
Well, the knuckleball can be a weapon and it can be your enemy as a pitcher, because I relate this story many times. I came in relief in Chicago at Comiskey Park, struck out the last batter of the game in a 3-2 game. So we won the game, right? Now, the knuckleball went right through my catcher's legs.
Oh, my gosh.
On strike 3. And as you know, if your catcher misses strike 3, the batter can run.
Take him, right?
Yep.
So the batter reached first base. There was already one man on. And so now they got 2 men on, and then the next guy hit one of my knuckleballs in the gap. And we go from winning 3-2 to losing 4-3.
Yeah, that'll happen. That'll happen.
Oh, that does happen, yeah. I'll tell you, I've had catchers tell me they got sick when it was my turn to pitch because they didn't want to catch that knuckleball. It is, when it's on, it's just like a butterfly. You don't know where. Even you as a pitcher, when you're throwing a fastball, you're throwing a curveball, you're trying to hit spots. When you're throwing the knuckleball, you're trying to hit a region.
I don't see any pitchers throwing the knuckleball anymore. You never hear about it. It takes the toll on you.
You know why? The game has evolved into
speed,
power on both sides. I'm either going to hit a home run or strike out, and I'm going to either throw 100 miles an hour, and I may walk you. It's a power game today. Not the. I'll tell you a story of being in a Minnesota farm team's clubhouse. I'm talking to the players, and their pitching coach is one of my former pitchers when I was a pitching coach. And he is retired, and he's now a pitching coach for the Twins. As I start speaking, he stands up in the locker room and he goes, "Fellas, I want you to pay close attention to Mr. Clark. He is the best pitching coach I've ever had in my career." So I go give my speech, and at the end of my speech, I go, "Guys, any of you want to talk knuckleball after our camp? I'm available." And the same guy that just called me the best pitching coach he's ever had 10 minutes earlier stands up and goes, no, nobody's throwing the knuckleball in here.
It's tough to throw, and it's tough to catch.
Yeah,
and
it is.
So now you've had this meeting. You talked finances. Dave's now a client of Doug's. You're getting the financial situation set up, and this is, I'm sure, driving the two of you closer and closer to each other and creating this really super bond that you currently have. What was the next step from that? What was the conversation?
So one of the things that I told Dave he should do, whether he wants to let me take any credit for this or not, is I really told him he needed to write a book. And I kind of helped push him to that. He even kind of thanks me in that book. I didn't write it. I didn't do any of those things. But I was like, you need to do something. And I think he had made a couple of efforts with some other writers. It just didn't float. And a couple people had proposed stuff to him, rule number 2 and all those kind of things that happened. And, so he has these stories of people that kind of did something. And then finally he met with one of our local sports writers that had followed him since the 90s. And they did the coffee shop thing, and Dave's a journaler. So when he's on the road, he journals. So he had a lot of information that he would have probably forgotten. And he opened up those journals to this sports writer, and they put together a great book. You can get it. It's called Diamond in the Rough, the Dave Clark story on Amazon. That's right now, that's the only place that's available. And it's really well done, especially when you know who Dave is, because I can read it and I can read between the lines in this particular book. And so it was a great resource. So I pushed him to do this book, and so when it finally we finally got a publicist, and we tried to get it published, and then we went to this thing called iUniverse at the time to get it out there initially. And during that time, when we finally had books, I was helping organize book signings for Dave, just as a friend, just because I thought this is a good thing to do. And so I did some marketing, got Dave's, some people don't know Dave in Corning, New York still, but still there's a lot of people that do. And so we set up like 5 book signings. And during that time, I was reading chapter 2. I was rereading the book, and I was in chapter 2. And I was reading the stories of the chapter. It's called My Saviors. It's the people that Dave really helped Dave in his life. One of them is about a gym teacher. One of them is about his parents, his dad. And the one story that always just gave me the chills, which would probably be better just to share because it's really the origin behind almost everything in our marketing that we're doing right now, was a story about Dave. And I'm going to let Dave take this over in a minute. But he read this story. I'm reading the story because he had built up so much anxiety about a field trip where the teacher had announced where he would be walking 5 blocks away to the local fire hall in Corning. So he's 6 years old now. I'm going to let him take it over because it's his story, not mine. But I was reading this story and getting the goosebumps. But go ahead, Dave. Take it over from here.
Yeah, I mean, one other thing my parents did, and I got 2 brothers as well, and they never treated me any different than anyone else. And neither did any of the kids on our street. So up until 5, 6 years old, I didn't know I was different. And then all of a sudden you start school, and bullying is not anything new today. It always existed. It may be done differently today, but It was there when I started school in the 60s. And, um, I was being bullied when I went to school. And it's not fun to be the target of bullies, I can tell you that. Um, and so the teacher announces this walking field trip, and I know that I'm going to slow the class down because I've got 2 full-length leg braces on and walking with crutches. So I know I'm going to be the target of the bullies on this particular day, and she announced it a couple of weeks early. So I've got 13, 14 days of anxiety buildup. And so as the day gets closer, I'm really getting anxious, and finally the day arrives, and I wake up that morning and I go, I'm sick, Mom. I can't go to school today. Mom, my mom was tough, and she said, you're not sick. Get your braces on. You're going to school. So off to school I go. I get to the room, and teacher says, all right, let's line up. We're going to go on a field trip. So my little 6-year-old brain did the only thing I could think of for self-defense. I waited for the line to form, and I went way to the end. And I thought, well, if they don't look back, I'll be okay because I will catch up to them. That was the only defense I could think of at the time. So I go to the end of the line, and just before the teacher says, all right, let's go, just before, little 6-year-old classmate of mine, I never forgot his name, Ernie Pound, pulls up this red radio flyer wagon, and he says, Dave, I brought this to school to pull you today. Jump in. And that little act of kindness, never forgot it. And it changed that whole day. It became a day of inclusion for me. A lot of the kids in the class said, hey, I want to pull Dave. It's my turn to pull Dave. And it just changed the whole culture of that day. And I'm going to let Doug take over again from here, because what happened was Ernie's family moved to California after first grade. Oh. And I never saw Ernie again. And
what a great story.
I never forgot what he did. And so when this sports writer was writing my book, I made sure to thank Ernie in the book.
Wow. So you got to understand, I'm a father, as we said, with a child who's got neither arm developed, and my son Gideon was actually quite small at the time. And I'm rereading that chapter, and I'd already read it because I'd read the book when it was still in script form. So I'm just rereading it, and all of a sudden I'm getting the goosebumps, as you probably just did, as anybody listening did. If you have a pulse, you just got goosebumps. Absolutely. Listening to Dave share that story.
I got tears. Forget about the pulse.
Yeah. And so I'm sitting here reading that story again, and I'm like doing these book signings, and I go, I got to find this Ernie Pound. And so I remember Googling him. This is early stages of Google, and didn't find him. And then at that point, I went to the phone book. And so in the phone book, I found an Ernst Pound living in the Watkins Glen, or actually Odessa, New York area, about 45 minutes away. And there's an Ernst Pound, and I have one of those awkward phone calls from my office. And he's probably at that point seeing caller ID, Merrill Lynch. And somebody I told him I'm looking for an Ernie Pound. He reluctantly, and I can tell you, he reluctantly came to the phone. And I started telling him that he was thanked in a book for something he might not remember. He brought his radio flyer wagon to school to pull one of his classmates. And he didn't know what Dave went on to do, but he remembered the wagon. And the one thing I remember him saying, he said it was his sister's wagon. So I convinced him to come to a book signing.
Oh my God.
Right? Dave is completely unaware. I mean, I would say, when I say completely unaware, he has no idea that's going on. But I made sure his father, and I think his mother, was at the coffee shop. My wife was at the coffee shop.
My wife.
Oh, yep, I saw the video.
Yeah, and I think your dad was there that day too. And I just told him to come. It was just come, because I wasn't even sure Ernie was going to show. He didn't commit to showing, but he did come. And as soon as he walked into the door, I knew it was him. I just knew it. It's one of those things, you see somebody, and he was tentatively walking in. And I go, "Are you Ernie Pound?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Here's a book. Dave's going to want you to have one of these." And he gets in line. And it was a fairly long line that day. Dave signing books, Dave signing books, Dave signing books. Ernie comes up, and Dave would typically sitting there, and he'd typically say something like, "Who should I sign this to?" And Ernie basically says, "Sign this one to Ernie Pound."
Oh,
and if you can imagine, we have that on video.
I saw that.
So we have that, and it's one of those things where Dave's probably tearing up right now because that reunion just eats and
I'm tearing up now.
Yeah. So you can imagine now we flipped through a couple of years really, and then I wound up leaving Merrill Lynch after the merger of Bank of America and Merrill Lynch. And I told Dave when I left Merrill, I wanted to do something with a story, but I didn't know what it was. And I did a website. We did our first website for him. And we got, through some of his connections, we got a speaking event, a pseudo speaking event, not like a big paid one or anything like we do now. And he went to the National Consortium of Academics in Sports. They asked him to speak, but they also asked him to be a part of the diversity in sports panel. So we had like a NASCAR people there, and this is, there were some real big hitters there, including the guys that put their arms up in the 1968 Olympics. People would remember, right. Carlos and Tommy Smith.
Exactly.
So
right.
You get those guys were there, and some other folks, and Dave gets up with notes in his hands. I always joked with him about this, and we had to get him up on stage. He actually had to take a little elevator. He was in a scooter. He got him up on stage. He gets up on his crutches, and he shares 3 stories. And one of them was this story we just told you, and there wasn't a dry eye, not Dave's, not anybody in the audience. After he gets done that little keynote, there was an instant standing ovation. You could just feel the energy. It's one of those times you could feel the energy in the room. And then after that, actually that weekend in Orlando, because that was at the Peabody Hotel at the time, Dave and I unofficially shook hands on being business partners. I was like, we got to do something with this.
Okay, stop right now.
Yes,
we got everybody's heart and pocketbook
ready.
right in front of them. So we're going to give everybody, you're going to give everybody phone numbers, email addresses. How do they reach you? How do they make a donation? And tell them what charity they're going to make a donation to.
So when it's on the charitable side, we go to D3Day, and we have .com just because that's simple, D3Day.com. So it's very simple. D3Day, DAY.com. D3 stands for Disability Dream and Do Sports Camps that Dave and I run together with professional sports teams, primarily hockey and baseball, because those are kind of our 2 major niches. There is a donation button on there. That donation goes to our fund, the Disability Dream and Do D3Day Fund. And so it's pretty simple. D3Day, that directly supports the camps that we do. On the other side, on a business note of how we support the camps, we have a QR code that's up here, and we have what's called the Pulling Each Other Along Collective, and that's PEOAcollective.com. There's all sorts of information, how you can join a group. If you're an entrepreneur and you're doing fairly well, you can join us and be a full sponsor of all of the events that we do. But because we don't want to just be pulled along, we want to pull your business along as well. And so we're actually actively trying to get you that return on investment that you're putting into us, but we're also getting the return on impact of what we do through the Disability Dream and Do and through our keynotes and through even things like this that we're doing today of getting this incredible story, because one of my passions is to get his story out there. But we have a whole list of other folks where these stories impact the parents like me who realize that their child does have potential, and we want to explore that potential through our sports camps that we do.
We're going to talk about that in just a few minutes. We got so much to talk about, and we have so little time to go and do it.
Oh, I know. Who needs questions, right?
Exactly. All right, so we're going to take a short break, and we're going to pay our bills, and we're going to be back in just a second. Thank you. Stay tuned. Hi, everybody. My name is Norman Wasserman, and next to me is Lisa Rodino. Lisa and I host a TV podcast show called The Business Power Hour with Lisa and the Music Man.
So what does the Business Power Hour do? We are here to talk about you and your business. We will put you on air for 1 hour to highlight your business in front of thousands of viewers worldwide, helping you generate more leads to grow your business.
And we do this every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. right here.
What are you doing?
I'm keeping you on point. My name is Lisa Rodino. I am a commercial loan advisor and broker. Have you been finding that your business's cash flow is not where you need it to be? Have you found yourself taking from your personal accounts to meet your business's obligations? Have you found that those quick solutions of quick money are starting to get awfully expensive? My job is to find the right funding products for my clients so they can get back to working in their business and give me the task of finding the best options for their situation. Give us a call today to learn more. 516-268-0350.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Friend Entertainment USA. My name is Norman Wasserman. I am also known as the Music Man. Let me just tell you a little bit about Friend Entertainment. We put on concerts for charities, and we do that everywhere from New York to Las Vegas. We do R&B, Motown, rock and roll, jazz, whatever it is that you wish. Friend Entertainment will deliver the best of the best for you and your charity. Here are some of the names of the talent that have performed with us on our stage. Stevie Wonder, Tina Turner, The Temptations, Earth, Wind and Fire, the one and only ELO, Elton John himself, Kool and the Gang, and the fabulous Donna Summer. Go to our website, friendentusa.com. That's www.friendentusa.com, or feel free to call us at 631-698-9696. 631-698-9696, and we'll see you at the next show.
Okay, welcome back to the Business Power Hour with Lisa and the Music Man, and our special guest tonight, Doug Kornfeld and Dave Clark. You guys are killing me. You guys, we see all kinds of people, all kinds of businesses. We have all kinds of charities because we do that every month. But your story, and we haven't even touched, the rest of the story that we're going to hear is just phenomenal. And I thank you so much for being here and explaining what it is that you do. So let's take it now to the next level and discuss the charities themselves and how you got started. You shook hands, and then what happened?
You want to take this, Doug, or you want?
Let me take it. I'd rather you tell a story. So we're going to jump you into a story. Basically, when Dave and I had our first kind of pseudo business meeting, I had all these grandiose ideas. I actually built a business plan. I did a lot of thinking. My son Gideon was actually in a hospital for months, getting a leg lengthening operation during this time. So I'd be going to coffee shops, trying to figure out how do we keep the business going. I wasn't making the Merrill Lynch money anymore, all those kind of things. And so I was thinking, we can do a movie deal, we can do documentaries, we can do children's books, we can do speaking events, all these things that you can do as far as revenue. And when Dave and I had the meeting, he's like, well, Doug, what I really want to do is I want to do more sports camps for kids with disabilities. And I go, okay. And I said, so I just said, well, he was already doing one in Fort Myers with the Twins organization. Mm-hmm. And so I got to experience it, kind of see how he ran this, where he with the level that it was at. It was beautiful. And so I started mimicking that. And so I started going to some of our entrepreneurs, and I'll give a shout out to one of them, Barry Nicholson. He was like the first person I met to in the same coffee shop where we had that reunion we just talked about. And, I laid this out to Barry, and he goes, yeah, I'll throw some money at this. And so he did. And then he's become like this really kind of constant sponsor of ours. He runs a couple of local businesses in the Corning area. And so we did that. And then so he was the first one to say yes. And then, because it was like, okay, how do you do this stuff? I don't know. I had to get people with disabilities. I had to get a field. I had to get, all this stuff, and so we gave it a name. And so I had a guy help me with actually, naming it. We actually named it Disability Dream Day at first. And then that got changed over time to Disability Dream and Do. Because Dave has a quote. He says there's two types of dreamers. There's dreamers that dream, and there's dreamers that dream and do.
Yep.
And he's obviously the latter. And so just one thing had another, and then all of a sudden we had some success at our local camp. The camp in Fort Myers got a little more successful. So we reached out to the Binghamton Mets, which was the AA organization. They're now called the Rumble Ponies. met with their general manager, and he was like, "Yep, let's do it." The first year we did it, I think we had like maybe 40 participants. The second year we were at 80 participants without even like advertising for it. And I'm like, okay, these are getting expensive. We're traveling, we're paying for hotels,
and we don't charge,
and we don't charge a dime.
We don't charge.
We don't charge a dime for these cans.
Because the day we do that, and I told Doug that, I said, the day we charge a dime, I'm out of here.
Right. So we've never charged a dime for all of the events that we've ever run. And we could start seeing the impact. And, when we make small little tweaks, somebody would, and as they grew, it's different doing a camp for 25 kids than for 120. So it was, we had to do all this stuff and just changes. And so that was really kind of the pivot into not necessarily doing sports camp or not doing speaking events and movie deals and documentaries, which have started and have, and I've written a children's book now, which we can also talk about, A Pound of Kindness, which we have a few copies left. I'm about to get more printed. But they can go to pullingeachatheralong.com and order that as well. But we, it just started, and all of a sudden then we had another team, and then we had another team, and then we said, hey, let's do hockey. And it's like, because Dave played ice hockey in college. And so we did some hockey events, and those are some of the most fun events that we probably have ever done. And we started to really build a brand of this.
Were you able to secure any grants from the government at all?
Not government grants. Didn't even go that route, to be honest. But we do get some grant money. But I'll be honest, Norman, where we're more comfortable and where I'm more comfortable is that we raise most of the money through our own businesses. And so we started selling our own products, our own branded products, and our business is what's funded most of this. Now, we do have a 501c3 nonprofit fund that, people, when they do grants, most of our grants of one of our bigger partners has actually been the Sam's Clubs that we partner with. We have several Sam's Clubs that we partner with.
What kind of businesses do you have that you'll be able to get these donations or monies?
Or grants.
So this is a weird story to pivot right here, but we were desperate. Like the knuckleball, Dave calls the knuckleball a desperation pitch. We didn't know how we were going to get funding. I mean, I had 7 kids at home at the time. Dave had 2 kids. It's like, okay, what do we do? And I had some young man approach me about wanting to sell honey to raise money for us. And so I said, okay. And we created, if you're familiar with Corning, New York, some people are, some people aren't. Corning's a glass town. It's got a rich glass history. Most of you, if you have iPhones, you're touching Corning glass every day. They make the hard glass. It's called Gorilla Glass on there. Dave grew up in this glass town. And so the first fundraising thing that we had success with is we filled raw natural honey. We put it in a mason jar with a handle. And I took Dave's logos of him pitching, throwing, and hitting, and we actually etched them into the glass.
Oh.
And I made a little collector's mug filled with honey. And when we did some of our first fundraising where I set this up, and I have a bit of a background in this, so it wasn't like I was just going into this dry from things that I'd done in the 90s and whatever. And we went to we have a big marathon in Corning. It's called the Wine Glass Marathon. So I have this glass mug filled with honey, story, whatever. But I'm still thinking people are going to want to buy Dave's books, buy hats, buy T-shirts, just because the cause is so great. But lo and behold, you know what people really want?
The honey.
They want honey. And we sold like $3,000 worth of honey in a day and a half.
Whoa.
And I'm like, okay.
Are you still selling it?
Yes and no. COVID kind of knocked us right off the tracks with that. And I felt like we kind of reached our limit of how much we could do. And a lot of that was at Sam's Clubs. We did festivals, and then I created other products. We did a big fundraiser at our local mall at Christmas time, but the mall is, I don't want to bash it, but it's all but dead anymore. The traffic's just not there anymore. Right. So for me to spend 6 weeks doing that, I'd be making a third of what we were making a few years ago. And so we pivoted. It's like when you hit a brick wall, when you have when you play baseball on crutches, you hit a brick wall, you got to figure out how to get around it. And so we pivoted. And so no, we're not actively selling the honey right now. I'm still selling it from time to time because people call us and they love our honey and products. And when we do some speaking events where I can take the product there, we'll have it available because people want those collector's mugs and things. But no, we're going after bigger money, to be honest.
So what are you doing to go after the bigger money? What kind of events or such are you looking to do? Or maybe there's people out there that can help you.
Yeah, I hope there are. So there's two things that were our initiatives right now. We're about ready to run a fairly extensive campaign. One is more speaking events for Dave Clark. You just heard some of the stories. He didn't even touch on it. But I can tell you from just a few weeks ago, we were in San Jose. Dave and I did a keynote together. And when I say we did it together, we do these together kind of like this. But he's the cake and I'm a little bit of the icing. That's kind of how we do the keynotes. And Dave was literally in line. We were signing books for 5 hours. 3 of those hours, it was nonstop. And I mean nonstops to the point where I had to ask kind of jokingly, can Dave get a break here? He had an Italian sandwich that he had not literally been able to take one bite of that was sitting there for 2 hours. And I asked the line to stop so he could start taking some bites of his sandwich. And the impact that his story had for this crowd is so significant. We were getting a lot of those keynotes prior to COVID, but then COVID shut that down completely.
Right.
Now we're in the presence of, okay, we want to fill up his 2024 schedule. It's not cheap to have us come, but it's worth it. And so we're targeting, bigger corporations that would bring us in. This was a large county education. They've given us a letter of recommendation and they're referring us to other organizations right now. So that's one area that we're working on. The one that I'm doing every day is we're inviting people to join a team called the Pulling Each Other Along Collective. And in that collective, we are inviting business people, entrepreneurs, some nonprofits in that want to network with us. But everybody that's a part of our Pulling Each Other Along Collective is also a part of helping support our sports camps that we do for kids with disabilities. And so they become sponsors of that.
Okay. And what's the best way to contact you for those that are interested in being a part of this?
So if you're watching, you want to take a picture of the QR code and it'll take you to the Pulling Each Other Along Collective website. And that's PEOAC Collective, PEOAcollective.com. And they can connect us through there. LinkedIn is a really good way to get me because I'm like the only Doug Cornfield in the world other than my 7th child, who's a Doug Cornfield Jr. So Doug Cornfield on LinkedIn is a good way to get me. And if you do go on Dave on LinkedIn, chances are it's just forwarded to me. So I have to, just come straight to me for that one. And check us out on our websites, any of the websites, D3Day, pullingeachotheralong.com, pulling the PEOA Collective, all of that comes back to me and they can reach out to me directly that way.
All right, I'm going to make you another offer too. Maybe this will help you. Hopefully, it certainly won't hurt you. Anytime you're doing an event, I don't care where it is in the country, but if you got whatever it is going on, if you send me the link to the flyer or the advertisement, Friend Entertainment will put it up there forever. And you don't even have to call me. You don't have to ask me. You just send it to me.
Gotcha.
All right. So we will help
Jessa,
you.
if you're listening, one of my partners and team members in all this, Jessa Grace, who's been
I've spoken to Jessa. Hey, Jessa.
Yeah, if you're listening, Jessa, I think she might be, or she'll listen to it later. Remind us and me that we want to send Norman.
Send me whatever you got anywhere.
Yep.
Like we're going to be doing some more online events. So one of the give backs that we're doing when people invest in us through the Pulling Each Other Along Collective is they get a 1-hour keynote to their audience so that people can answer questions. Dave will share his keynote and stories online, but we'll get real personal with their group of people. And so that's one of the things that we're offering because schools and businesses are already paying us for that service. So this way we can offer that to our collective members. They get on our podcast and we're connecting them with our powerful network as best we can.
That's wonderful.
I know I want to. I hope we can get this out. Dylan, can you post the website online, and Lisa has a copy of it there.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to try to get as much of this 32 pages in. But a lot of these pages are pictures of people that I guess belong to the organization and such. That
So
I'm
if you're at the
looking
pullingeachotheralong.com page,
Yep.
that is promotion of the book Pulling Each Other Along.
Correct.
Right. Now, I was just going to ask about that. You have the book right on the front page of Pulling Each Other Along.
Right.
Yep.
And that's available on Amazon as well, or you can get it directly from us. If you want it signed, you get it directly from us.
Wonderful.
There's a soft cover version of that online as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then I only have a few copies of this left for right now, but this is the children's book, A Pound of Kindness. And of course, I'm a little biased how good this book is because I'm the author. But you heard the story earlier if you're still listening, and this is available right now at Pulling Each Other Along, or still at apoundofkindness.com as well. But Pulling Each Other Along is a good place to go.
You know what I wanted to ask you as we're going along this? Every not-for-profit has a mission statement. What is your mission statement?
So right off the cuff, it's there's a couple of tag phrases that we have. Right now, Pulling Each Other Along is really kind of one of our mission statements. We want to pull others along. We want children, especially with disabilities and young adults, to have an opportunity to reach their potential and strive for their potentials. So, we have creating lives and changing lives and all these kind of things for, that we have these taglines. But Pulling Each Other Along is really kind of what we're about, specifically for the disability community, but really for everybody.
Yes, and I see on the profiles page, it's just endless with all the folks that you have currently. And of course, I watched earlier the video of Dave and Mr. Pound meeting for the first time. That's an incredible story there.
No, it's credible too. When I saw Dave with Jim Valvano. Wow.
Might be a different Dave.
No,
Are you talking about Jimmy V? We weren't with Jimmy V.
I don't think
it was the Jimmy V.
That was Chris Nickick.
Oh, I know Chris.
That's Chris Nickick, who has a chapter in our book, The Young Man with Down Syndrome, that's now two-time Ironman finisher.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And professionally signed with Adidas.
Very nice. Now, I also see that you are doing the speaking engagements and you're promoting that on your website. And again, your bookings for other folks that are out there for speaking. That's very nice.
How many other kinds of speakers, or how many people do you have that you can put out there?
Well, there's like 20 plus in that book that we have access to. Wow. That I can call up and email, call up, whatever. And there's some incredible stories in there. Chris Nickick being one of them we just talked about. Mark and John Cronin, if you're familiar with them, from John's Crazy Socks. We've got Dave Stevens in there that we work with.
I did some fundraising for John back in the day when he first got started. I got a phone call from his mom.
Oops.
From John Cronin?
Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
And
so you live down that way, right?
Yeah. Well, he's in Long Island, so am I. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Right. So we have Rocky Blyer that's a part of the book, and Rocky, for those that are old enough to remember Rocky's story, his story was a made-for-television movie. So, there's all sorts of folks that we have connection with. But as a business, when it's Dave and I speaking, that's the bigger way for us to raise money for the sports camps that we run.
What kind of organizations normally hire you to do the speaking?
Go ahead, Dave.
Just basically anything, because I can craft my speech pretty much to accommodate whatever that organization would like me to address for their if it's leadership. I've been a major league coach, so I know leadership skills. If it's overcoming, I know that. If it's schools, which really are probably my favorite to speak to, other than locker rooms, is schools, because kids need positivity today. There's there's just so much negative in the world today, and we need to change that. And we can't do that overnight. We got to do it one kid at a time.
Yeah.
Besides
And
the interesting
corporations as well. So like Siemens
And
Energy,
corporations,
Corning
obviously,
Incorporated, BB&T Bank, those types of places we've spoken at in various forms. Could be a convention, could be a banquet.
Now, obviously, you'll both of you, your story is just sensational, and it beats down to your heart. But what are some other interesting stories? Have you ever shook anybody's life up? Anybody that was, looking to give up, and after a conversation?
Yeah. I mean,
tell us about one or two of those.
Well, I'll give you a prime example. When I first, I went to Ithaca College, and I was wanting to get into their phys ed program. So I'm going to backtrack a little bit here. So when I applied for the phys ed program, they denied my request. I was already playing professional baseball at that time because I signed at 18, and they told me I was unemployable in phys ed. So therefore, they weren't going to let me into the phys ed school. So I fought it tooth and nail, and convinced them to let me into their phys ed school. So, and just as an aftermath of that story, I'm going to go another route, but just the aftermath of that story. Let me think. About 25 to 30 years later, I get a call from Ithaca College, and I pick up the phone, and they go, "We'd just like to let you know that you've been inducted into our Athletic Hall of Fame." And I'm thinking, you didn't even want me in your phys ed school, and now you're inducting me into the Hall of Fame.
Did you tell them yes, or did you say stick it?
No, I was cordial. It was an honor, so I accepted the honor. But right after I graduated from Ithaca, Corning Community College was starting a baseball program, and at that time, my fiance was a student at Corning Community College, and she said, "I just saw this sign on the phys ed door that said they're looking for a baseball coach." So I applied for a baseball coach, just coming out of Ithaca College. I got the job. And then they expanded. And here's why you should always open up the book and not just look at the cover of the book. Open up the book and see what's inside, not just what's on the cover, because I get to Corning and I'm the baseball coach, but they want to add a title to me. They want me to be the disabled students coordinator. And I said, well, just what does that count? What that's a title. What is my job? And they said, well, you are to, first of all, go around the campus and look at and make sure it's accessible. Now, this is in the 70s, long before, ADA and all that.
Right.
I had no clue because I had never felt limited. I could go up steps. I could go in a door as narrow as 2 feet. And I never even thought about it. So when I went around the campus, I said, everything's accessible. Everything's accessible. and nothing was accessible, but I said everything's accessible.
For you it was.
Right. So they assumed because I had crutches and brace that I would know what I was talking about. And I had no clue what I was talking about. But you ask a question. So one of the things I had to do was set up physical education activities for those with limitations. And I also had to be more or less a counselor for those with limitations. This boy, his dad is a professor at Corning Community College. And the boy, I won't name him, but he had spina bifida. So he was in a wheelchair. And his dad kept him secluded in the house. He didn't ever let the boy do anything. Well, I started going and picking him up and getting him involved in our activities. And he started realizing, hey, there's a whole nother world out there. And he started taking part in all of our activities, bowling, going to hockey games, playing board games, having social nights. He started doing everything. And then he went up to his dad and he says, I'm moving out.
Whoa!
You
And
gave him
his-
the independence.
And I'll never forget, his dad marched into my office up at the college and he said, what did you do to my son? And I looked at him and I said, I gave him some independence.
Give him hope.
And,
Hear,
and,
hear.
and that boy went on to a very good life. He accomplished things.
What's he doing now?
He has passed.
Oh, I'm sorry.
He has passed on now.
Sorry.
But he got to experience what the world had to offer. And that's exactly what my parents did do. They didn't keep me hidden in the house.
And that's why you're who you are.
And that is, when we do these camps, Doug and I, we don't just put the camp on for the participants. I go in and I speak to the players in the locker room before the camp. I speak to the parents before the camp begins. And then we speak to the participants and get them on the field. So there's really 3 different groups that are impacted by what we do.
Do you also have, I guess you do, professional ball players that come down to the camps?
They all do.
Oh.
When we do, for instance, when we do a camp here in Fort Myers with the Twins, the whole team comes out.
Mm-hmm.
And they work with the kids that day. And then we take them back. We take the entire group back the next day. And they are acknowledged on the field prior to the game. The PA announcer will acknowledge them. We all get them down on the field. And typically now, they will have taken video of the camp the day before and they'll edit it into about a 60-second clip and they'll put that up on the big board at the stadium while the kids are down on the field. And then the kids form a tunnel that the starting lineup runs through.
That's
that
great.
day.
That's nice.
Awesome.
It's usually a first pitch and different things like that that we incorporate.
Doug, let me switch to you for a second because it's getting kind of late over here. You must have a bunch of events that are coming up and things for people to get involved with. Do you have anything you want to?
So most of our events are over for the year. We do have an event coming up in Corning, New York, and then we have a speaking event in Savannah.
Camp down here, October 7th.
Yeah, October 7th. And then we have an event we're doing with Florida Gulf Coast University as a part of their adaptive program that they do. We're running a baseball clinic. We're still waiting on the flyers for that to be promoted, but that's that's
do you
kind
have
of our.
any of these events? Like I said, send me all the events.
Yeah.
Whether you want to put it on one flyer, group them together, or you want to send them individually, it makes no difference.
And then this quarter will be, we can't really start scheduling our events until we know the schedules for the professional baseball players.
Mm-hmm.
So we usually start the scheduling anywhere between now and the first couple of months of the year. So that's our schedule starts populating, because once we know what the schedule is, our schedule is. And then some of it's based on the more camps we can do based on more funding. So the more people we get into the Pull Each Other Collective, the more events we're going to be able to do.
I got to thank Bill
Talked
Walters, who Lisa also knows, so much for having you and
to him
I
yesterday.
speak. I'm sorry?
I talked to him yesterday or the day before.
Yeah, he's going to be on in a couple of weeks, too, with one of his associates again. I can't get this guy off the show.
Oh,
So,
we love having him.
And I'm sure he's listening, so you heard it from me.
Yep.
You heard it from me. Again,
And we ran out of time, but next time I want to hear about your son, Doug, and see what happened with him.
Sure, we can get him on too. He's trying to figure out life. He has been an incredible portion of he was selling a lot of our products And then COVID happened, and that got pretty much shut off.
How old's
the
your
way
son?
He is 25 now.
Nice.
It's hard to believe.
Wow.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Okay,
25,
one last time, and give it to them with all you got. How are they going to reach you? How are they going to make donations?
So if you're going to make a donation, go to d3day.com. If you want to join us on a business level, which is where a majority of our funding comes from, go to peoacollective.com, and POA stands for pulling each other along. It's also, if you're watching, you can just take a picture of the QR code, and we can go from there. Contact us. We'll do a short meeting. There's all sorts of ways to get involved on a pretty low financial end and then a higher financial end. And then if you're interested in us speaking and finding out what our rates are for that, contact us through that. Or like I said, LinkedIn, I'm easy to find because I'm like the only Doug Cornfield in the world.
Great.
Well,
Thank you for joining us tonight. It's been
an honor.
inspiring.
It's an
Yes,
honor
Yes.
to have you guys.
Thanks for having us, for sure.
on the
Thank
show.
you for having us.
I hope this broadcast will help you, and I hope Friend Entertainment can help you, and we'll definitely have you guys back on again. And I thank you so much. Stay there. Don't disappear yet. So we're just going to
Yes,
say
hold
goodnight
on.
to everybody. Wow.
Yes, and a double wow on top of that.
You know,
So, wow.
you look at Dave and you think about when people say, "Oh, I can't do this and I can't do that."
Yeah.
I don't believe in can't.
No, there's
You
no
know?
such word. You've got to. You've got to keep going forward. Even if you get 2 steps back, you keep taking a
What
step
an
forward.
inspiration!
Yes.
All right, and I gotta say so to Doug, I guess Dave had the story and Doug put the story out there, and
Yep.
together they're rocking and
Teamwork.
rolling, and that's a
Yep.
double play.
Yes.
That's a double
And the
play.
teamwork behind it
There
is
you go.
great.
So I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. We'll be back here next Tuesday evening at 7
Yep.
o'clock sharp with the Business Powwow with Lisa and the Music Man. Have a wonderful weekend and be safe, everybody. Oh,
Good
you know
night,
what?
everyone.
Before everybody goes, we didn't mention NRG.
No,
The
and there's a big
extravaganza.
event tomorrow.
Tomorrow is the huge extravaganza.
The extravaganza, 1 o'clock Eastern time on Friday, September 8th.
And if
Be
you
there.
need to find out how to get on there, call me, Norman, 631-698-9696. I will get you hooked up. Come meet some people, go make some more money, and create awareness for yourself. That's what we
Yes.
do. All right. Good night, everybody.
All right. Good night.
The Business Power Hour with Lisa and the Music Man is sponsored by Media Stations. Create your own media and have your own station. To get started with your own content, call or text 516-448-2066. That's Media Stations in Bohemia.